Good morning, and thank you for everyone being here, including members of the jury and Your Honor. My name is Kimberly Fialos, and I am the attorney representing Ms. Francine Flipper, the plaintiff in this case. Prior to June 29, 2010, Ms. Flipper was an active 65-year-old widow. She enjoyed playing tennis almost every day, in addition to spending countless hours at the beach. These activities were her lifelines since the passing of her husband. They were not only emotionally enriching, but provided much-needed physical exercise and was beneficial to keeping Ms. Flipper in good physical shape. On June 29, 2010, that all changed. On that day, as she has done on so many occasions before, she stopped by her local Winn Yankee supermarket to pick up some vegetables and milk, never knowing on this particular trip disaster would be the result. While walking through the produce section, Ms. Flipper slipped and fell on mist that had collected on the floor. That mist was created by a Winn Yankee employee misting vegetables. We also will show that at the time of Ms. Flipper's fall, that no warning signs, caution signs, or any other cones or any type of warning was posted notifying customers of the problem. In a matter of seconds, Ms. Flipper went from an active 65-year-old elderly woman, an active 65-year-old to an elderly woman with a broken right hip and a broken right wrist. As a result of these injuries, Ms. Flipper spent 3 weeks in the hospital, followed by 8 weeks of physical therapy. As of today, Ms. Flipper still suffers pain in her hip and wrist and is no longer able to play tennis. We will present to you evidence to support Winn Yankee's breach of duty they owed to Ms. Flipper as a invited customer of their business. Due to this breach, we will further prove that Winn Yankee is liable for Ms. Flipper's injuries and the medical issues as a result. I thank you, members of the jury.
Thank you very much. Attorney for the defendant, opening, please.
I think that what I'm supposed to be doing is telling you an entirely different version of the story that the plaintiff told and will tell. I'm actually not going to do that because the truth is that a lot of what the plaintiff told you is entirely true. A very nice, very active older woman, Ms. Flipper, did have a very unfortunate accident on June 29th. That part is true. Another thing that's true is that Billy Bright is a forgetful employee. On June 29th, when Billy should have already been dressed and on his way to work, he's still at his house in the throes of a spiteful argument with his girlfriend. This argument goes on even after he should be at work, beginning his shift duties, things like stocking the shelves and misting the vegetables. As was regularly the case, Billy sauntered into work late that day. He began stocking the cereal but didn't finish the job before going outside to take one of his numerous smoke breaks. When he comes back, he's forgotten about the cereal and he takes out the hose to mist the vegetables. Before he can turn on the water, something distracts him. Maybe it was yet another message from his angry girlfriend. Maybe he remembered that he hadn't finished the cereal. Whatever it is that's going through his immature and distracted mind, he shoves the hose under the vegetable display and runs off to do something else. When he does finally make it back to the produce department, he finds Francine Flipper on the floor with Mr. Fingers, another customer, helping her. Mr. Fingers was with Mrs. Flipper from the time she fell till she was taken away by ambulance. Mr. Fingers has also stated under oath that he never saw Billy come back with the mop and bucket like Billy claims. Billy was fired that day, and no one likes getting fired. Billy sure has found a good way to get back at his employers. He says that he wasn't written up for misting the vegetables and not mopping the floor because of some conspiracy by my clients not to leave a paper trail. I suppose that's one explanation. We also didn't write him up for arson, though, or for crunching up all the potato chips. Does that mean we're part of an elusive plot to burn down the store or to ruin the snacks? Of course not. That's ridiculous. Absence of evidence isn't proof of a cover-up. Billy Bright didn't get written up for these things because they didn't happen. He didn't set anything on fire. He didn't crunch up the potato chips, and he didn't miss the vegetables. So what did happen then? Francine is an active woman. The plaintiffs will go to great lengths to tell you about that. Someone so active wouldn't be content laying on the beach like a frail old lady. She would be jogging, playing frisbee. She'd be hot and sweaty. She'd probably want to take a quick dip in the nice cold water before she jetted off to grab some snacks before the Golden Girls came on. She would probably still be dripping wet when she came into our store. She was no doubt in a hurry, and she was still wearing dangerous and inappropriate flip-flops that themselves were still wet and sandy. She was only here for a few moments before she slipped, a woman running around, dripping wet, with slippery shoes. It's not really surprising that this happened, is it? We're awful sorry that Mrs. Flipper suffered. If there's anything we could have done to prevent it, we would have. If we would have seen her running around, dripping on the tile floor, we would have asked her to go dry off, to slow down, to change to safer shoes. If only we could have known. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's going to be easy to ignore the facts, to ignore that my client couldn't have prevented this, to ignore that Francine Flipper made a mistake that day and wasn't as careful as she should have been. It'll be easy to see Francine as your mother or sister. She actually looks just like my grandmother. It'll be easy to say that this nice old lady deserves some money after what happened to her. But you must first consider two things. The first is the law. The law says that you have to look at my client and Mrs. Flipper and compare our stories and see which is more likely. Did a stock boy who's never once done his job suddenly start doing it? Or is it more likely that an older woman who created more than one hazard for herself, rushing around, wet from the beach, slippery shoes, did she simply have an accident that was no one's fault? To find my client guilty of negligence, you must be completely sure that Billy Bright is a man of his word and not just angry about getting fired. The second thing you should consider is where that money will come from. We all look at my client and see some big corporation. We all think it's just chump change to them. They'll just write it off. But ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Flipper isn't seeking chump change. She's seeking a very substantial amount of money, an amount that'll have to come from somewhere. Finding in her favor will also cause our insurance premiums to rise. And I know we're all thinking, so they'll get it from somewhere. It's no problem. The only place it can come from, though, is you, from the consumer. It won't be a couple corporate board heads that pay for this frivolous lawsuit. It'll be a mother buying diapers for her child whose budget can't stand the rising prices. It'll be military personnel on fixed incomes who can no longer afford milk. And it'll be you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who bear the brunt of this. So look at the evidence, pay close attention, especially to Billy Bright, and ask yourself, can I believe him? Am I so sure that he bothered to miss the vegetables? Am I so sure that I am willing to pay for his mistakes? And if not, if you're not sure about Billy, if you're not sure about him or about any of the witnesses the plaintiff will present, then I ask you to take the brunt. Then I ask that you don't take the brunt of this, that you return a verdict for the defendant. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, at this point in the trial, we're going to have, since we've had the opening statements, we're going to have the plaintiff call their first witness. Who would you like to call as your first witness? And I think we're going to have a change of attorneys.
The plaintiff would like to call Francine Flipper to the stand.
Okay. Ms. Flipper? And I'll have the clerk swear in Ms. Flipper.
We can take it and down. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
Thank you. She's sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Flipper, how are you doing today?
As best as I can.
Thank you. And just for the record, could you state your name, please?
My name is Francine J. Flipper.
Thank you very much. And I see that you're very well dressed for court today.
Thank you. I do my best.
Now, Ms. Flipper, could you please tell us in your own words, what happened on the day of the accident?
Well, my kids were down here for the holidays, and I wanted to make them something to eat. So I went to the Win Yankee, like I always do, to get some vegetables for my stew. And when I was walking through the supermarket, I slipped and I fell on the floor.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about that. And now, if I may ask you, you said that you had slipped on the floor.
Yes.
Did you happen to notice if the floor was wet?
Well, the floor was a different color. The color was a little different, but I didn't know that the floor was wet. If it was, I would have never went that way.
Right. And when you say a different color, did it have, was there any type of spills on the floor that you've seen? Was there any type of signs?
There wasn't any sign. I didn't see anything.
Okay. Now, in your own words, would you say that this was just a any other day like it is in Florida? Was it nice and sunny?
It was nice. It was a sunny day.
Okay. All right. Now, one last question for you, Ms. Flipper. Could you tell us what you happened to be wearing on that day?
Well, I did go to the beach before I went to the store. I had on a bathing suit, over a little over top to go cover up my skin, and I had my shoes on.
Okay, thank you very much, and I have no more further questions for this witness.
Thank you. Defense counsel, like to cross-examine?
Hello, Ms. Flipper. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Okay. Ms. Flipper, is it correct that you were in the vegetable aisle of the Winn Yankee supermarket when this incident occurred?
Yes, I was getting my vegetables for my stew.
Okay. As you were walking through the vegetable aisle, was there anything that was blocking your view of the floor?
No, nothing was on the floor.
Okay, so you were paying attention to where you were walking.
Yes, I always do.
Okay, did you see any signs of liquid around on the floor? Okay, you had mentioned that the floor was a slightly different color before you fell, correct? Do you remember what color the floor was or the texture of the floor in the vegetable section?
I don't know. It was just, I don't know. It was just a little different from. I looked at it. It was a little different from the color of the rest of the tile. But I'm an old lady. My eyes are not that perfect. I didn't know exactly what it was. I didn't pay it any mind that close of attention to know to know exactly what color it was. It wasn't
Right.
the same color as the regular tile.
Right. Okay, and what was the weather like on this particular day?
It was a nice day.
Okay, so there was no chance that there may have been moisture accumulated from or weather outside conditions.
I don't know.
Okay, Miss Flipper, what type of apparel were you dressed in on the day of this incident?
I had on my beach clothes.
Okay, and what type of footwear were you wearing?
I had on my beach footwear.
Okay. And what type of footwear may this have been?
My flip-flops.
Flip-flops? Okay.
Yes.
I do have a piece of evidence. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to have that admitted.
Yeah, let's show her the evidence.
Okay, it's just a photograph of, is this the type of shoes?
Not that color, but
But I mean, it'd be a similar type of shoes to these. Just so I can.
yes, yes.
Okay, I'd just like to show the jury so they can see an example of the type of footwear that Ms. Flipper was wearing that day. All right. And so these shoes did not have any back straps attached to them, correct?
No.
Okay. And do you think that flip-flops become increasingly slick underneath when they are wet?
I don't know.
Okay. Would you consider this choice of footwear to be supportive of your foot?
Yeah, that's why I have them on.
Okay. Isn't it correct that you had just left the beach in order to go watch the show Golden Girls?
I love the Golden Girl.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, and during your day at the beach, did you come into contact with any water?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So is it possible that the footwear, the flip-flops, may have been damp from your day at the beach?
All the way to the store, I don't think so.
Okay, but isn't it true that you were in a rush or a hurry to get home so that you didn't miss your show?
I wanted to see my show, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Any recross, counsel? Redirect? No further questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Flipper. You may step down. Sticky, who is Sticky Fingers who's going to cross or examine? Yes.
The plaintiff would like to call Mr. Sticky Fingers to the stand.
Mr. Fingers?
Left hand's on the book, right hand's on the card.
Right hand on the book?
Right, left hand's on book, right hand's up. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I trust.
He's sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Fine. How come you got on dark glasses? Never mind.
Just for the record, could you please state your full name?
Mr. Stick E. Fingers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fingers. And if I may ask you, what is it that you do for an occupation?
I don't know. What did I tell him last time?
You're an accountant.
I'm an accountant.
Thank you very much. So, as an accountant, it would require you to be looking at numbers all day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And by looking at numbers all day, I would assume that you'd have to have good vision because you have to be able to read what's in front of your paper. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I understand that you were at Win Yankee on September 10th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you please tell me in your own words what happened on that day?
I was in the produce section, looking at some products, some produce there. And all of a sudden I heard somebody fall and noticed that they were already down. I turned around, and there was a young lady there, and she was just laying there. And I don't know why she fell, but I just noticed she was falling. I went over to see if she was okay, and I noticed that she looked like she was injured. So I didn't try to raise her up or anything. I think I called for some help.
Okay. And if I may ask, who is it that you called for help?
I think I called the store manager or somebody like that, a first employee I could find to go get the store manager to render assistance.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I may ask, in the produce section, how often do you go to the produce section of Win Yankee?
How often?
Yes.
Whenever I need something, some produce to
Okay.
produce something.
And while at the produce section, do you happen to notice if there's usually if the vegetables or the fruits are wet of any kind?
Not in particular.
No. Okay. Now, on that day, do you happen to recall if the floor was slippery that day?
Can I cross-examine? No, I don't cross-examine. I'm the witness. I got a question. On my last testimony, what did I say on my last testimony? Did I say I noticed?
Felt a little wet.
I think it felt a little wet. Listen to the judge.
It's been a while.
Now, you said that the floor happened to be a little wet. Did you happen to see any mops or any wet floor signs?
I think I did notice a wet floor sign there.
You did, okay. Now, in regards to the wet floor sign, was it in a visible location or was it kind of hidden?
Yes. Visible.
It was visible, okay.
Yes.
Approximately how far from the scene of the accident was the wet floor sign, would you say?
5 feet, maybe.
Okay. Now, we can see that Miss Francine Flipper over here is dressed very nicely. Could you please tell me if she's wearing glasses?
Are those glasses or sunglasses? Oh, can you see me? And I can see you. All right.
Okay. Now, would it be a fair assumption that with someone who has to wear glasses has perfect eyesight?
Restate your question.
If someone is wearing glasses, would it be fair to assume that they have perfect eyesight?
No.
Okay. Now, if she does not have perfect eyesight, and if the wet floor sign was not near the scene of the accident, you said approximately 5 feet away, would it be fair to assume that she may have seen that sign?
I can't make that assumption. The reason I may say no, because I don't know how she can see.
Fair enough.
All the eyeglasses do is give you opportunity to see whatever in front of you, whether it's near or far. So I'm not an optometrist, so I can't really make that assumption.
Fair enough. And one last question for you. Could you recall on the day that you went to Win Yankee, could you tell us what the weather was like that day?
I think it was sunny.
Sunny, okay. No further questions?
Thank you. Any redirect?
You said you shop at Win Yankee often?
Who are you?
This is the attorney for the defendant,
Who's the defendant? Her?
for Win Yankee.
Okay, all right.
You
sorry.
said you shop at Win Yankee often?
Every now and then.
Would you recognize Billy Bright, the employee that works in the produce department?
Probably not.
No? You said in your witness statement that you heard Miss Flipper fall,
Yes.
and then you saw her get put into the ambulance as well?
I did not stay around to see if she got put in the ambulance or not. I didn't make that.
How long were you around?
Long enough to see, make sure somebody came to render assistance to her.
5-10 minutes, maybe?
Yes. Mhm.
During the time that you were there, did you notice an employee come up with a mop and sign?
Not to my recollection.
Okay, thank you. No question.
Any redirect? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fingers, we appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
The plaintiff's next witness. Would the plaintiff like to call their next witness? Plaintiff calls Danny Bright to the stand. Mr. Bright, please. Mr. Bright, could you just clarify for the court, is it William Daniel Bright?
Yes, and I'm afraid my employer of 2 years didn't know my name is not very good.
Left hand on the Bible, right hand up to God. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Groovy.
He is sworn in your eye.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Had to come all the way down here, but I'm fine.
For the record, can you please state your name for the record?
My full name is Danny Daniel William Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. And can you please tell us what was the name of your last employer?
My last employer was Books A Million Bookstores, Incorporated.
Thank you. And on the day of September 10th, where were you employed?
That day I was employed at Win Yankee, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. And what was your job title at Win Yankee?
I was just a regular stock boy, cleaning up when I needed, just going where I needed to go. Doing what they told me.
Doing what they told you. Okay. Now, in Win Yankee, did you ever happen to work in the produce department?
I did, on several occasions.
Thank you. Now, in the produce department, what is the regular process for taking care of the vegetables and the fruits?
Well, when one of the assistant managers or managers decided to come out of their office and spread a little policy around, they would tell us to go mist the vegetables on occasion. So on that particular day, I went to mist the vegetables. Normally, there's hoses that are available under the produce section trays where the food is, and we mist them, and then we normally pull mops out to mop up any excess water and put a sign out.
Okay. Now, on this day of September 10th, did you actually mist the vegetables as you were told?
I did.
Okay. Now, Win Yankee's policies for when misting the vegetables, could you please state that one more time?
We are supposed to mist the vegetables with the hose, and then if there's any excess water, if we see or feel that some spilled on the floor, we're supposed to clean it up and then put a sign out to warn people not to slip in it, although you'd think they could see it on the floor.
Okay. Now, one question for you, sir, is that when you're doing this, are you to put the wet floor signs out before or after you mist the vegetables?
After, that would normally be when the water's on the floor, but yes, we're supposed to do that.
Okay. Now, if I may ask, on this particular day, you said that, or in the process of misting the vegetables, you said use the hoses that are available in the stations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, on this day, did you use the hose that was available to you?
I did.
Okay. Is there a possible chance that when you're misting the vegetables, that some water would spill on the floor?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is it also possible that when there's mist on the floor, that the floor would instantly be wet?
I'm sorry, am I supposed to respond to that in any other answer than yes? Obviously, if there's water on the
Okay.
floor, it's going to be wet.
So, would it be safe to assume that with a wet floor that you could slip, if not given the proper?
But attention?
Yes.
Yes, sure, of course.
Okay. So we have a Miss Francine Flipper who is walking through the area. We have determined that she was going through the produce section. Is it possible that when mist is on the floor that it could cause the floor to be a different shade of color?
Oh yes, it's like a blue tint when we mix our cleaner into the water bucket. So, sure, of course it could.
Okay. So, Ms. Francine Flipper earlier said that the floor was a different shade of color. And on this day when you were misting the vegetables of September 10th, was there any distractions in your life going on at that time?
Yeah, there was.
Would you please care to elaborate that?
I must. My girlfriend and I had just had a fight. I wanted her to quit her job, but she didn't want to, so we broke up.
Now, would it be safe to say that this would cause a distraction in your thinking process?
I would think so. She's an exotic dancer.
Okay? Now, if I
Order.
may also ask, with this cause in your thinking process, would it be possible for you not to follow Win Yankees protocols for when misting the vegetables?
Sure, it happens all the time.
Okay? So it would be safe to assume that with having done that, is it possible that you could have not put the wet floor sign out on the floor?
Objection sustained.
Okay, no further questions.
Morning. Sorry about the name thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bright, you were scheduled to work on June 29th,
Sure, yes,
and you went to work?
I did.
You've received multiple write-ups for coming in late, though, haven't you?
I wouldn't say multiple, I would say a few.
More than one?
Sure,
Less than 50?
yes.
Okay, so you received somewhere between 1 and 50 write-ups for being late?
I would say that's accurate.
And on June 24th, you and your girlfriend got into a fight?
We did.
Would you describe yourself as irresponsible?
No.
No. Would you say that the work at Wing Yankee was too difficult for you?
Dealing with the managers, yes, but the work, no.
Was it too demanding?
Not on that day.
No. Too intellectual?
Again, talking to the customers, but the work, no.
Would you describe your work at Wing Yankee as intellectually fulfilling?
Sure, go with that.
But otherwise, it's pretty basic,
Yes,
pretty routine.
yes.
It's about the same every shift.
No, depends on what we're doing that day. Again, I told you I was assigned different tasks on multiple shifts, so that day I was mopping the floor, misting, but some days I'm not.
Even if you're assigned different tasks, when you come in, they don't need to explain how to do the tasks, do they? I mean, you're familiar
No,
with
unless
the.
it's a new task, I know what I'm doing.
Okay, so you don't need to watch an instructional video every day before you begin.
No, but that'd be a nice way to start my day.
Yeah, you don't need to consult a list.
No.
No, reread the employee manual.
No.
And that's because you've done most of these tasks so many times. It's routine, as you said, right?
Yes.
And you remember what to do,
Yes.
and you remember how to do it.
Yes.
So if there was some problem with your work, it wouldn't likely be because it was too hard for you.
No.
Okay. So, or that you didn't know how to do it.
No.
Okay. And misting the vegetables, that's something that's done mostly every day?
I wouldn't say every day, but yeah, sure.
And you've done it, what, at least a few dozen times?
Sure.
A few dozen times you've gone in back, gotten the mop bucket and sign,
Yes.
and then you come back, pull the hose from under the display,
Sometimes.
and then you unroll it and you turn on the water?
Yes, that would be the procedure.
Okay, and then you spray the vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
and then you turn off the water,
Yes.
okay, and then you would mop up,
Sometimes, yes.
okay, and then you'd place the wet floor sign on the floor, is that correct?
If it was wet.
Okay, and then you'd roll up the hose. Let me ask you this, have you ever left the house wearing only one shoe?
I've left parties only wearing one shoe, but not the house.
Okay, have you ever gotten into the shower, soaped up, put shampoo in your hair, and then just walked out of the shower without rinsing off?
Yes. In fact, I have fallen, and that's been the case. But no, on a normal basis, no, I would not do that.
Okay, so generally the tasks that you do every day, you're pretty good at.
Yes.
Okay, and since, like you said, you're not irresponsible, and the work is not overly intellectually demanding, and missing the vegetables is a task you do almost every day, there's no reason to believe that you would have all of a sudden forgot how to do it, right?
No.
Okay, but you did have a fight with your girlfriend that day,
I did.
and you were often late.
I was late occasionally.
And if you were late, you may have been a little behind on that day?
Sure.
And you wouldn't have needed the mop or the sign if you hadn't sprayed the vegetables, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so if you didn't have the mop and sign, and you do know how to do your job, is it possible that maybe you hadn't yet sprayed the vegetables?
No, I sprayed the vegetables.
You're not a huge fan of Win Yankees, are you?
No.
And wouldn't you agree that making up a story about misting the vegetables but not mopping would be a great way to get back at your employers for firing you?
I'm not that clever, ma'am.
Well, that's not what I asked. The question was, if someone was apt to get revenge against my client for a perceived wrong, is it not true that making up a story such as yours would be a good way to do that?
Maybe, but not me.
Well, I guess the situation just worked out perfectly for you then, huh?
Well, I'm down here, so I would say no.
Okay, and then one more thing. You weren't written up for forgetting the mop bucket or sign, were you?
No, didn't want a paper trail.
Objection sustained.
Okay, no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes. Now, Mr. Bright, you stated during the cross-examination here that you would miss the vegetables and then place out the wet floor sign. Is that correct?
In this instance, I did not place the sign out, but I did miss the vegetables.
Okay.
If I said otherwise, I must have misspoke.
Okay. So is it Win Yankees policies to bring all the necessary equipment with you before you were to start a project?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. Did you happen to leave the area in the midst of your project?
Well, I missed in the vegetables, and then I needed, of course, once I realized there was water on the floor, I needed to go get the sign in the mop bucket. So I was gone for maybe 3 or 4 minutes in that process.
Okay. So during this time, the area is unattended, is that correct?
Yes, unless another person walked over there, it was unattended.
Okay. So in this, is it Win Yankees policy to leave a workstation in progress unattended?
No, if you have to leave a workstation because you have forgotten something, you're supposed to have somebody cover the area. But there was nobody over there. There's never enough people in the store.
Okay. So one last question for you, sir. In this regards, because you admitted you were distracted in your thought process that day, is it possible you forgot to bring the necessary equipment with you to miss the vegetables? And is it possible that you've forgotten to notify someone to watch your station for you?
Yes, that's a fair statement.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any recross? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bright. You may step down. The plaintiff want to call the next witness to the stand, please. Dr. Casey, please come to the stand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Of course I will.
Good morning, Dr. Casey. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Could you please tell us your full name?
I'm Dr. Lauren Casey.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background? Where did you go to medical school?
I went to medical school in Philadelphia.
Okay, and when did you graduate?
I graduated in '86.
And where did you do your residency?
I did 2 residencies. I did one in Miami, Florida, and I also did one in Switzerland with the best there is for total joints.
Okay, could you give us a brief summary of your private practice?
I do, as an orthopedic surgeon, I do anything that deals with orthopedics.
Okay, and what exactly is orthopedics?
Orthopedics deals with the bones.
And are you board certified in anything?
Yes, orthopedics.
Okay, and have you been qualified to testify as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer Dr. Casey as an expert in orthopedic surgery.
All right, any objections?
Okay. Dr. Casey, before testifying today, have you had the chance to review Mrs. Flipper's records?
Yes, I have.
And when was the first time you examined Francine Flipper?
When she was in the ER,
Okay. And how long has Miss Flipper been a patient in your care?
since the time of her accident.
Okay. And what were her complaints in the ER immediately following the accident?
She had a swollen hip, very discolored. It was enormous for her size.
Okay. And did the exam reveal, what did that reveal?
It revealed, after the x-rays and things, she has a broken wrist and a broken hip.
Okay. And what treatment did you recommend?
Surgery.
Surgery. And at this time, Your Honor, I would like to enter the photos of Francine Flipper's injuries into evidence.
First, you want to show them to the doctor and ask if
Yes.
that's her hip.
I can see right
You can
here.
see it?
Yes.
And can you describe to us what exactly is on that picture?
That is her right hip. It's where it is dislocated and it needs to be fixed.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and go to the next photo. And
That
can you
is-
tell us a little bit about this photo?
This is the wrist.
Okay. And do you have an opinion within a reasonable degree of medical probability as to whether those injuries are permanent?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that opinion? What will she have to have?
She will have to, after having the total hip done where we've had to replace the ball in the socket, she will have to have another one done in about 10 years, and every 10 years after that.
Okay. Do we
And
have?
for the wrist, she will probably have motion problems for both joints, really, for the rest of her life.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the pictures of the x-rays. And now with this picture, what exactly had to be done with Miss Flipper?
You can see where it's broken at, and since it's broken in that location, we have to put a total joint in.
Is that where the arrow is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the x-ray of the wrist. And what exactly are we looking at here?
You're looking in this area where all the little bones are. Do you see?
Down toward the wrist area,
Right, through here.
in the middle.
Right. And with having to put a pin or even any type of prosthesis there, she has some limited motion of that wrist, and she will always maintain at least some sort of limited motion.
And is this going to create any problems for her in the future?
She won't be able to play tennis.
And would this cause any type of arthritis further on down the line?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
And it could possibly have to have either the bones, she might have to have the pins replaced or even removed eventually.
So this is going to cause her pain for the rest of her life?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then do you have any opinion as to the exams that you have done on her as to whether she had a pre-existing condition before the accident?
No, she was a very active woman.
So she was completely healthy before she took this fall in Yankee?
Yes, as far as joints are concerned, yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have for the expert.
All right. Any cross-examination?
You were not the doctor that originally saw Mrs. Flipper when she was brought into Halifax Hospital, were you?
I would assume yes.
Okay. What's the address of your practice?
Objection, relevancy?
I'll get there.
International Speedway?
As a member of the local professional organizations, do you know roughly how many practicing physicians are in this area?
It depends on your specialty, because each one of us, whatever specialty we're in, each one has a different. But we do know who's in the area, and I know which ones I refer to.
Did you know that there are almost a dozen doctors that actually live closer to Mrs. Flipper's house?
That's not my issue.
I withdraw. I read in your bio that you worked with Dr. Eng at the Anderson Clinic. Is that correct?
Yes,
How long did you work with Dr. Eng?
probably a year.
Okay, and you also work with Gans Reinhold in Bern?
Yes,
And for how long?
for approximately 6 months to a year.
Okay, and Chet Sutherland in Tampa as well? And for how long?
Probably is within that a year.
Okay, so in those combined 3 years, did you ever have a difference of opinion with any of the doctors?
We do,
Yeah, so it's possible for different doctors to have different opinions?
yes.
Okay, and so then it's possible for a diagnosis to be subjective?
All diagnoses are subjective.
Okay. And so it's possible that there are a few doctors between Mrs. Flipper's house and your practice that might have come to a different conclusion about the severity of Mrs. Flipper's injuries?
Yes.
So it's probably good that they chose you then, right? No withdrawal. Let's talk about your opinion for a second. Your opinion is based on a number of things, I'd assume. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your own exam of the plaintiff?
Yes.
And x-rays?
Yes.
Okay. And the information provided by the plaintiff, such as medical history?
The medical history is something that is, I'm not concerned with the medical history as much as I am about her orthopedic history.
Okay. Also, you would base it on the accounting of the accident, I mean, what
Yes.
happened, right? And all those facts on which you based your opinion were all supplied to you by the plaintiff and her attorneys?
No, it's also supplied from her medical record. It's also anything that was happened to her within that time frame.
Right, okay, but some of the facts would have been supplied from the patient, obviously.
Yes.
Right, okay. Would you agree that the opinion that you shared is only as accurate as the facts that you base that opinion on? So if the facts turned out to be inaccurate, then the opinion would likely change?
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
If you found out that those weren't her x-rays, for example, would that change your diagnosis?
Of course.
Okay. Would you agree that if the facts that you base your opinion on, if those facts were wrong, you know, it's true that that would affect the accuracy of your opinion?
Objection, speculation.
Objection overruled. Yeah, answer the question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Would you agree that if the facts on which you base your opinion, if those facts were wrong, that that might affect the accuracy of your opinion?
The facts that I based my opinion on was the actual exam of the patient and the actual exam of the x-rays.
But you said before it was also based on the accounting of the accident. So if that accounting,
The
if it was-
accounting of the accident tells me how she fell and how she broke each of her extremities.
Okay. Let's talk about her for a second. One symptom of the hip fracture is the inability to put weight on that leg. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And the wrist, it's unlikely that someone had a broken wrist, they'd be able to lift something heavy, a suitcase full of books. Right. Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Does the plaintiff wish to, okay, or sorry, defendant wishes to cross-examine. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Casey, just to clear the record, you were the examining doctor in the ER
Yes.
the day that Francine Flipper was brought
Yes,
in,
ma'am.
correct? And those x-rays were taken in the emergency room, and after they were taken, you went ahead and reviewed those.
Yes.
So there's no chance that those are anyone else's x-rays besides Francine Flipper's, is that correct?
Most x-rays have the patient's name and part of their patient number written down on there.
So those are pretty much guaranteed to be her x-rays,
Yes.
correct? And doesn't age contribute to the severity of the injuries that Ms. Flipper sustained as a result of the slip and fall?
Yes.
So that could contribute to her being able to get back up to the functioning that she was before?
Yes.
That she's not going to be able to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Your Honor.
Are there any more questions? Redirect? Okay.
You said that the x-rays are pretty much guaranteed to be hers.
Yes.
Are you willing to say with 100% certainty that no error has ever been made in a hospital that having to do with documentation and the patient for whom it belongs?
We are all human. We do make errors.
Right. Okay, no more questions.
But if you happen to go to surgery and see the wound,
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Casey. We appreciate it. Does the plaintiff have any more witnesses they would like to call at this time? If the plaintiff rests his case, does the defense have any witnesses that the defense would like to call at this time? Okay, then we'd like to start closing arguments. I'm going to allow the plaintiff to go first on the closing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, thank you for your time here today. It has been it's been a very grueling case, as we've seen. In this regards, we have seen Ms. Francine Flipper go from a very active woman to a woman who now has to walk with a cane and is not able to play tennis as she once did. This is a very tragic situation, and it's all happened because of the negligence of Win Yankee. Win Yankee's responsibility is to provide a safe location and safe shopping for their business invitees, and they failed to do so. They failed to do so because they did not properly train the employees. They did not properly train how to handle situations. And in this regard, now a woman has now lost her mobility and is now subject to having constant pain and constant torment of this awful incident for the rest of her life.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to hear the case presented to you today. You were given a lot of information today regarding this case, information ranging from how the plaintiff, Ms. Flipper, believes Winyanke was negligent and how Winyanke believes Ms. Flipper contributed to the accident. However, some information was not brought to your attention. Some of this includes that this case is a civil case, not a criminal case. No one is going to jail or going to be sentenced. Only monetary damages are being awarded. Also, the burden of proof in a criminal case is different from that in a civil case. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is a standard most of you, I am sure, have heard. This is not true in civil cases. In a civil case, like the one brought before you today, has a different standard of proof. In a civil case, you need to think of the scales of justice, and if that scale is slightly tipped one way or another, then you can award damages based on how far you believe the scale is tipped in one party's favor. We argue that Ms. Flipper has ownership to liability in this accident, and that the liability she is at fault for is through no fault but her own. These liabilities is what causes the scale to tip more towards Winyanke in the case than that of Ms. Flipper. I ask you, how far does the clothing, including loose flip-flops that Ms. Flipper was wearing, tip the scale? How far does the alertness of Ms. Flipper after being in the sun and the beach all day tip the scale? How far does Ms. Flipper's disregard for her surroundings tip the scale? We have proved to you that Ms. Flipper was in beach attire, including flip-flops, which are very unsafe footwear. We've also proved that Ms. Flipper was in the sun at the beach most of the day. At Ms. Flipper's age, the sun and heat can be very draining and tiring. When you look at all the circumstances and events that took place up to the accident, you can reach the conclusion that Ms. Flipper has contributed to this accident. In a civil case, at the point of monetary damages is not to reward the plaintiff, but to compensate her. With that being said, Winyanke should only be responsible if they were completely at fault for the accident, and we believe that Winyanke was not. Winyanke by no means are trying to diminish the pain and suffering what Ms. Flipper had to endure, but we are trying to make you aware of the negligence that she exhibited to contribute to this accident. When you are dismissed to decide the amount of monetary damages to award in this case, I would like all of you to consider her negligence, and does her negligence alleviate any liability that Winyanke has? Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to dismiss our jury of 6 into the jury room to make a decision as to whether they feel that Winyanke was negligent or not negligent, and to come back with a written decision to hand to me, and I will read it to the court. The jury has reached a verdict. The jury finds the defendant, Winyanke, negligent and awards the plaintiff, Francine Flipper, medical reimbursement from damages sustained on the date of the incident and future rehabilitative damages. They do not find the defendant, Winyanke, at fault, so they're not negligent, for punitive damages. So there will be no award of punitive damages, compensatory damages for the plaintiff. Thank you all for your service. I appreciate it. Thank you all for your service, jury. And at this time, the trial is concluded. Thank you.